This is the second tutorial looking at the private room and furniture system in the Space Virtual World platform. We've already looked at how to set up a basic private room to put on sale as a template other people can customize in World. Now we're going to look at the extensions to that room floor component. There are three really cool optional extras you might want to add to your room that will enhance the value of the regions you create and sell. You can create custom buttons that your customers can switch to change almost anything in the region. You could use this feature to completely transform the region from winter to summer, or even to swap entire terrains, apparently transporting the building from one location to another. I've just used it in this scene to toggle on and off the blinds in the room so that at night I can close them and make the place all cozy. You can make groups of lights configurable. Here I've dragged 3-point lights into a single light group. I've defined a default colour and a default intensity as well as a minimum and maximum intensity. My customer can change the colour of the lights and the intensity within the range that I offer. And you can enable the user to swap out materials on different parts of the region. In this case, I'm allowing them to change the floor texture. First, let's look at the custom configurable buttons. This function allows me to embed interactive components in the scene, which the customer can trigger from buttons in the room editor. In my scene, I have some simple blinds which I want the user to be able to open and close. I'm going to show the simple way and a more refined way. In the room floor component, I set the configurable buttons size to 1. I'm only going to have one button in this scene, but you could add lots for a wide range of configurable settings. I click the network ID. This is left as a manual function, as you might override this at some point in the future. I tick plus for activate and deactivate, and I drag the curtains into the field here. Now I open the function drop-down and choose Game Object Set Active. I choose the same function for deactivate, but I leave the tick box off. If I have multiple items that I want the user to trigger with one button, I can add more in the list of activate and deactivate. The Game Object Set Active function makes it easy to create buttons that enable and disable items in the scene. That's fine for these curtains. But I can also do something more elegant and create a button that animates the curtains open and closed. Here I have an animation I created in Unity using the Mechanim system. I keyframed an open and closed position and scale. By putting each individual curtain into a parent game object and then duplicating the parent and the child and moving that around the scene, my single animation can be applied to every instance of the curtains in the scene. In Unity, there is the animation file which contains the actual keyframes. And if you don't know already, you can keyframe almost anything in Unity, not just position, rotation and scale. You can also animate colours and material properties, all sorts. That animation file is then referenced by an animation controller, which is used to define when the animation is played. In your project, you'll probably be able to find some quite complex animation controllers for things like the player's avatar that controls state changes from run to walk to idle and things like that. The same controller system is used to set up very simple parameters like the ones on this curtain. I set the parameters and the states and the conditions. You can find out more about the power of the Unity animation controller in the Unity tutorials. Now I can drag the curtains into the trigger, and instead of the Game Object Set Active, I choose Animation Play. And then in the free text field here, I add the name of the state I want to trigger in the controller. In this case, my two states play the same underlying animation, with the speed of the closed state set to -1, playing the animation backwards. Now, when the customer clicks the buttons in their room, they and their guests will see the curtains animate opening and closing. It's worth noting that those same principles for triggering animations can be used with the clickable component and the proximity component in Space if you want to create animated events from users moving in the scene or clicking objects inside the scene. The principles are the same, but here I'm using them to trigger events through the room floor component where the button appears inside the Room Editor UI. Now let's look at lighting. To enable users to modify individual lights or multiple groups of lights, I use the Lighting Controls section. I'm going to enable 2 buttons for 2 sets of lights. You can do as many as you want to allow your users to modify different sets of lights in different areas of your scene. Here you can see I have 3 standing lamps. I have attached a point light to each. I drag them into my affected light field and you can see that the right number of slots is automatically created for them. I could do that manually by setting the number here and dragging each in. I add a name which will be seen next to the button by the user. Now I can decide what I allow the user to modify. If I leave colour unticked, the lights will be locked to the original colour I applied in the individual point lights. If I tick it, I can apply a default colour here. Now the underlying colour referenced in the actual lights themselves becomes functionally irrelevant, and I can allow users to override that default and pick whatever colour they want. I can also choose to enable the intensity, so users can dim the lights. I can add a minimum, a maximum intensity, and a default. The last area where I can offer a range of customization options to the user is the Materials section. This is where I can define areas of the scene where the user can change the materials. Here I'm going to let them change the floor texture. I could also enable the walls and the curtains to be changed. To replace materials, the customer needs to own some different material packs. These are a separate type of virtual good. See our separate tutorial on creating material packs. It's easy to offer a range of variations on your default. Here, for instance, I have a range of recolored versions of the floor texture for this room. I upload them as a separate virtual good in the system. Any user can buy those materials, and by enabling the floor material in this region to be customized, users who own this material pack can swap out the floor texture. And if they own other material packs from other creators or extension packs that you later release, they're free to apply those too. To enable my floor to be materials editable, I set materials size to 1, then associated materials to 1, and I drag my floor mesh into the available slot. If you have objects with multiple materials, you can create multiple material slots referencing the materials index. Okay, now I've shown you the different customizable elements you can use to enhance a private room region. To sell the region, you add the standard Scene Export Settings component by going to the Space menu in the top bar and selecting Scene Settings. Fill out the Virtual Goods component, adding product images for the store. Set the price, then set the Scene Export Settings themselves, just as you would uploading a regular region. When you're designing a region to sell, remember your customers are going to want something that fits within the platform's subscription settings. So be aware of the file size once you've uploaded it. You can see this in the Explore panel when you search for your region in World. Remember, you also have the file size inspector available here in the editor, which will show you everything Unity is packaging up with your scene. It's worth reviewing the bigger items here. There might be some errant textures or materials that are being packaged up that you're no longer using in the scene, or you might want to lower the resolution of some specific textures if they're very big and not being used very much. In the next tutorial, I'll show you how to set up furniture items that your customers can then lay out in their private spaces.